Thank you all for attending our fourth and final GHY University webinar of 2015. Importers and supply chain trade partners have obligations before, during, and after the border. This course will provide an overview to current and emerging processes, along with best practice examples in order to stimulate identifying ideas that may create compliance enhancements. After the presentation, we will be sending out the copy of the presentation slide deck, the recording of this webinar, along with a survey to help us better your GHY University experience for future webinars. If you wish to post on social media about this presentation, please do, but we kindly ask that you use the hashtag GHYU. And so a few housekeeping rules before we begin. This event will be recorded, and both the recording and the presentation slide deck will be made available after the webinar. You will all be in a listen-only mode for the webinar. If you have any questions, please use the Ask a Question function on your GoToWebinars panel. All questions will be addressed at the end of the presentation unless there is a common reoccurring question. If you're experiencing technical difficulties, please use the chat function on your GoToWebinars panel or email Maria directly at maria@ghy.com. And so a little bit about us before we begin. GHY manages more than $5 billion of cross-border trade annually through our Canadian and U.S. brokerage operations. We pay more than $100 million annually to governments on behalf of our clients, and we work with more than 1,000 importers and exporters. Growth and continuity through 4 successive generations is an incredible milestone. GHY has achieved it thanks to the dedicated people delivering quality service to great customers. It is a testament to the power of the highest levels of commitment, professionalism, and integrity. So our clients' needs shape our endeavors. We strive to understand our clients and share collective knowledge to help them succeed at global trade. We are committed to going the extra mile to provide the best service and trade solutions possible. To do so, we invest time and resources into training and equipping our associates with the technology and tools they need to excel. Today's GHYU webinar will be presented by our Vice President of Client Services and Regulatory Affairs, Dewar. Al is a certified trade compliance specialist and holds a professional customs broker designation. He has been at GHY since 1982 in a variety of roles within the operation, culminating in his present role as VP, Client Services and Regulatory Affairs. Furthermore, Al serves as a board member on the Canadian Society of Customs Brokers as second vice chair and is actively involved in committees. Without further ado, allow me to now pass it over to Al.
Well, thank you, Maria. Indeed, trade is the backbone of our global economy. In fact, cross-border trade between Canada and the United States exceeds $300 billion annually, and that's whether it's heading northbound or southbound. Approximately 60 million movements of goods enter into Canada on an annual basis. That's 60 million shipments each and every year. Movement of those goods requires some type of facilitation, regardless of whether that movement is for personal or business reasons. Customs, or CBSA, I think I'll refer to them as customs through the balance of this presentation, they are responsible for being the front lines in protecting the health, safety, and security of all the Canadians. Customs are more than just gatekeepers or tax collectors in duty and taxes, but they also collaborate and represent more than 19 other government acts in their control, such as the Canadian Food and Inspection Agency, the Safe Food for Canadian Acts, and Transport Canada, to name only a few. The 60 million shipments that were referenced are goods that aren't carried by a traveler as they hand carry, but rather those are goods that require a declaration directly on behalf of commercial businesses, commonly known as importers of record. And each of those declarations involve, or virtually always involve, the role of a broker. 2/3 of that 60 million, 40 million shipments, they enter via courier. Normally that be UPS, Federal Express, or DHL. And another third come in, of that being 20 million, commercial shipments arrive via other means, whether that be truck, air, or ocean. trade is moving across the border, whether it be sea, rail, air, or ocean on a 7/24/365 basis. This webinar is going to focus primarily on those 20 million commercial shipments where customs have the highest degree of risking and review, where penalties can be imposed in the event of any incomplete declaration by any supply chain partner, where the importer has their greatest accountability, their greatest culpability and responsibility, and why it's important to have a relationship with your broker in this ever-changing trade and regulatory landscape. Previous webinars this year have focused on the basics, whether that be importing into Canada or the United States. As well, we introduced the tools of the trade where most brokers, and certainly GHY, provide visibility to the importer of their declaration process, whether that be before, during, or after the border crossing. In many ways, these types of tools are not dissimilar from what we experience in our personal lives with things such as the electronic banking process, whether that be in individual transactions, such as authorizing an e-payment, viewing a check, or evaluating monthly statements to determine activity trends, whether that be how you use your money for food, clothing, shelter, or transportation. Technology is rapidly changing in the world, and the world of trade. In fact, the World Customs Organization has referenced 2016 to be the year of technology in trade. Though most of us are enabled by mobile technology, as we live in such a connected world, the commercial data shown on invoices seldom follow any type of standard format within our cities. Needless to say, if they can't follow a standard format within our cities, to expect the declaration process to be uniform on a global basis is just not possible. Supply chain partners, brokers, carriers, and forwarders endeavor to find relevant commercial data to interpret trade data on declarations that are provided, as each of those declarations are made on the importer's behalf. Your supply chain partner are responsible to interpret that data to form advanced trade declarations that are made with customs on your behalf, and this can prove challenging. Yet, it is critical that these declarations be accurate prior to the arrival of goods at the border. The World Customs Organization has put together a harmonized system custom tariff comprised of more than 5,000 unique classifications that often do not match the types of commercial invoice descriptors that are necessary. And as such, further and additional information and clarification may be necessary prior to the goods arrival at the border and prior to that advanced trade declaration being made. Information that may be needed that isn't elsewhere shown on a declaration include the product's origin, its composition, its function, and even its end use. In a world of constant innovation, and imported products may retain their essential characters but require different types of trade declaration that affect their duty and tax, and even, for that matter, their admissibility standards and statuses into certain countries. This may represent business and financial risks or opportunities, or potentially a loss of a marketplace competitive edge or opportunity. One recent example is in Canada involved that of wood flooring manufactured by United States prisons, and that was part of a rehabilitation program sponsored by the largest worldwide manufacturer of flooring that met all the necessary standards of being sold at a fair market value and price, and that was perfectly acceptable within the United States. Yet this program is not acceptable in Canada because goods manufactured by prison or prison labor are prohibited entry into Canada. As importers are stretched further into global free trade economic conditions, the resources of the importer are often focused away from trade declarations and more on that of the running of their own businesses. Importers can't be expected to be aware of all the background trade agreements, yet the lack of knowledge doesn't provide any exemption if audited by customs or any other regulatory agency. Given each of those trade declarations are performed on your behalf and a direct representation of your brand, it is important the broker is representing the importer with clear expectations and understanding the product's origin, composition, and end use. That flooring example mentioned, it really became front page news in the business section of the Globe and Mail, and it impacted numerous of the Canadian importers. Such visibility may or may not be desirable to your brand. To restate, the emphasis and responsibility and the obligations of this webinar are going to be focused on government requirements, and those government requirements are that of the importer, both pre-release, prior to the goods arriving at the border, and post-accounting. Trade data accuracy and interpretation matters, and it matters before, during, and after the border. Trade declarations and understanding opportunities within logistics and interpretations and different types of executions can form parts of carving your competitive edge in today's increasingly demanding marketplace. It just can't be said enough who is responsible when it all comes down to the declaration process, and that is the importer. The importer is ultimately responsible for all declarations made on their behalf, having to do with advanced trade data filing that is required on all modes of transport prior to the arrival at the border. Those declarations span more than 90 acts, including the Canadian Food Inspection Agency, Transport Canada, marking and labeling, etc., and that responsibility doesn't end at the time of import. Innovation is continually happening in the custom declaration process and throughout the supply chain. Customs are no exception to this, as they're trying to work and achieve more with less in managing the border crossings. This slide focuses on the EManifest program and the Advanced Trade Data program, and it shows how the responsibility of the carrier in EManifest, the top part of the slide, and the responsibility of the importer and by extension the broker, the Advanced Commercial Information Requirement. If you look at this slide and particularly look below the red line, prior to January 2016, next month, the Advanced Customs Information Declaration, that being the importer portion, may have been the only type of data that was provided electronically to customs in order to risk the goods and determine their admissibility or examination decisions by the frontline customs officer. After January 2016, the EManifest or carrier portion will be fully in place, requiring the carrier to advance file electronically all data elements highlighted above the red line. This enables customs yet another check and balance in the risking and enforcement of your goods prior to their arrival at the border. This validation of customs of broker and carrier data prior to the border arrival will most certainly result in other types of detection of incomplete or inaccurate data filings that hadn't been possible until January. In many cases, the importer will be the party who is responsible for any misrepresentation or misdeclarations, even though those are being done by other supply chain partners, because the importer is the person who is responsible. What we anticipate may be detected more so pre-border, more frequently in 2016 that didn't occur in 2015, were things like documents that got stuck in a fax machine. Those weren't detected previously, but in 2016, they may be detected by the carrier showing more information and then perhaps what the importer or broker has. A shipment may also be later redirected to a different warehouse, even while a shipment may be en route. And it's important for customs to know where goods are consigned even as they're approaching the border. Either of those errors, whether that be a stuck paper or just a changed consignment, would result in the minimum fine on an individual declaration of $2,000 if the data was found to be incomplete are inaccurate as part of CBSA's risking process, because customs, CBSA, are responsible for risking data to protect the health, safety, and security of all Canadians. To restate, advanced data must be full and complete. Many carriers won't even move to the border unless they know that a filing has been completely made and accepted by the importer, usually through a broker, of all trade data. They're able to look to see that a status is within Canada Border Services or customs filing as being accepted, and the carrier will then proceed to the border. Their time is valuable, and there is a carrier shortage. This doesn't relate to all carriers, though, in that rail, you can't necessarily stop a train, so if advanced filing isn't in place for a rail carrier, they'll still move the train, but they'll subject importers or brokers to additional handling charges that are at minimum $1,000 under what they call to be the rail tariff. Again, CBSA or customs issue fine for any missing data, and that minimum fine being $2,000. Though the risks are significant in a misdeclaration or misrepresentation, and certainly can affect you or your brand financially, it still is most advantageous for the trading community to use the services of a broker in presenting advanced trade data and declarations. Let's face it, trade is flowing on a 7/24/365 basis, and the brokerage community specializes in interpreting shipping documents while maintaining current knowledge on that constant trade and regulatory changes. Imagine living on Canada's East Coast in 2015. At any time, anywhere, 7/24/365, a snowstorm may, and in fact did occur. As a homeowner, you could either shovel your own walk or have a service provider such as your broker do it for you. This type of guaranteed service standard that regardless of the time of day, within 2 hours on a 7/24/365 basis, to know that your sidewalk and driveway could be fully cleared, that's the type of accountability and infrastructure that importers rely upon through using a broker. Those importers recognize the broker's value across all modes and the changing regulatory landscape. But it's important that a broker work closely with you, given your accountability. With that, I would ask the audience 2 questions. Are you keeping your broker or GHY familiar with any key performance indicators that you value in regards to trade facilitation? Also, second question would be, are you working or sharing with your broker or GHY your unique needs into the trade declaration that we would be able to share back data to you, or you could access data as we train our individuals or our technology to meet your particular needs. Trade facilitation on your behalf is done on your behalf through a general agency agreement and other unique terms and conditions that are part and parcel of what's most important to you and your businesses. Brokers design their business around meeting your needs on a 7/24/365 basis. It's important we have an understanding of your business processes to meet those unique needs. We recommend as a broker to use a single customs broker service provider who can be familiar and personalized services with accountability and ensure uniformity of trade data is accessible to you when you want it and how you need it. GHY has designed our business system and business model in this way. we have a single point of contact and a personal relationship with each of our customers. We endeavor to understand and be familiar with the changing needs of your product, to look for the most advantageous tariffs and types of origin and share that with you. And if there's any types of linkages or a method of purchase order showing or display, we need to be aware of that, so in fact that we can create the declaration at the front end to be accessible to you at the back end. Imagine customs could call up any of your individual transactions that use a particular data SKU and ask for information. By using a single service provider and a single broker, that type of information can be available to you within seconds, and even via using a mobile device. We welcome the opportunity to collaborate with you regularly to share how and understand how your products may be innovating. In fact, there's even some importers, usually in the garment and footwear sector, that engineer their product to meet and explore a more advantageous duty rate. By understanding your needs, we can align our data so that you have access to any work in process, all books and records, and any types of trade and logistics reporting that appear on the B3 to make accessible to yourself. We can share and collaborate with you to save potentially money. Automated reports can be triggered to be shared with you or any of your supply chain partners. And as well, measurement tools can be worked upon to meet your particular unique needs. While brokers are not supermen or superwomen, we can accomplish more, reducing risk and enhancing profitability when we work and collaborate in advance on your behalf. There really is a lot more to what happens in a declaration standpoint than that of paperwork. It affects governance, it affects strategy, it affects your reputation, and it affects how the government processes risk intelligence. There's a breadth of responsibility and a duty of care that needs to be revisited regularly, and we would suggest at minimum annually. There's multiple parties in the supply chain that are continually changing. In addition, global sourcing and marketing also is in constant change that can drive the duty and declaration status based on the fashion, form, and function of any particular article that may be crossing the border. For instance, what would the essential character be of the watch you may be wearing today? Is that a timepiece or is it a fitness tracker? Does that depend on how the product is used and who the end user is? Does it depend on the packaging or does it depend on the marketing? There's opportunities that can be explored. Those opportunities in fact affect interpretation. While the tariff is supposed to be the same at 6-digit amongst all World Customs Organization countries, there can be differences in how that tariff is interpreted amongst those countries. There's no such thing as a simple tariff classification. For instance, a domestic chair coming from China is subject to 9.5% duty. Yet a non-domestic chair, also coming from China, is duty-free. There are numerous examples of how tariff can be interpreted differently, even in the simplest of product categories. Customs do classify chairs differently if they're designed for that domestic or versus work use. IKEA decided to take customs to task to illustrate that a desk chair can be used interchangeably at home or at work and isn't committed or marketed for end use by design. This reclassification saved IKEA millions of dollars and any other importer or their broker who dedicate time and effort in following decisions as published by the Canadian International Trade Tribunal. The Retail Council of Canada, in another case, the Retail Council of Canada states that more than $1 billion is spent annually on Halloween. $1 billion on Halloween. Up until recently, Halloween costumes had to be classified by what they were made of and to constitute their essential character. Usually that duty rate would be 18%. Loblaws took Customs to task on Halloween and other costumes. Customs demanded that the costumes be classified as that material of essential character, whether that be fabric or plastic. Loblaws appealed that most costumes are designed for a single use or for a festive occasion, and as such, they were more festive than functional. Festive articles are duty-free. Again, that reclassification saved Loblaws and any of the importers or brokers representing importers who follow Canadian International Trade Tribunal decision. If everybody followed that, $100 million less each and every year would be collected by Canada Customs through claiming costumes as festive articles versus a functional costume. Just an example of how it's important to explore all options and share with your broker and collaborate on a regular basis. As a broker is facilitating on your behalf trade 724 without any type of frame of reference, how would you imagine they might classify a mouse coming from Disney World, for example? It's important that we have a collaborative understanding with each importer. The descriptor of a mouse, an invoice descriptor of a mouse originating from Disney World, that could be one of the squeaky guy on the left. It could be the computer mouse on the right, or it might even be that Mickey guy who isn't pictured. And yet the declaration must be 100% accurate in order to ensure that Customs is doing an appropriate risking prior to shipment's arrival at the border, and it also affects your trade status. Even by changing a trace material ingredient, imported products can attract lesser duty rates. Let's take a look at something like as simple as licorice. Pictured above are all sorts licorice. Licorice is a candy, and a candy has one duty rate, yet chocolate has a lower duty rate. The fact that there's trace material chocolate within licorice allows all sorts licorice, which is probably 95% candy, to be classified as a chocolate. Importers taking advantage of that would save a great deal more in duty than somebody who would just classify it potentially as candy. However, there's also cases of unfavorable duty rates or classifications that are assessed even after the fact, and those usually relate to goods that are subject to quota or areas where anti-dumping duty is applicable. In the case of the corn dogs pictured above, even if there's trace material of chicken within, and chicken happens to be a quota item coming into Canada, duty rates of more than 200% could apply. If not costed properly up front, and have happened to be found at a time of a customs audit, that type of additional duty could be very detrimental to the running of any importer's business. Understanding risks relate to before, during, and after the border. Undetected errors result in retroactive costs that can impact importers' profitability. Customs fortunately publish a verification list, a national verification list of priorities to assist importers on where to focus their trade compliance time and energy. However, that list is not exhaustive, as random controls must still exist. The importer owns all compliance and financial risks associated with declarations that are made on behalf of the supply chain, which is just further amplified considering that there's more than 90 other government department acts that could apply in the Safe Food for Canadian, the Marking and Labeling and Transport Canada, as earlier referenced. The risk of misdeclaration may amount to minor financial impact, but it may also cause other types of disruptions that aren't welcome to the importer, whether that be a supply chain disruption or any type of damage to your brand reputation if something happened to go viral in today's social media world. Your broker is your partner, and partnership requires complete transparency and collaboration in sharing information and changes as early as possible. Periodically, customs will even change the import duty rate. Usually that's a reduction. Often a difference of only a few dollars can impact the sale and profitability in today's tight markets. By better understanding your current and future needs, plans, and goals, your broker can share valuable ideas to benefit your business. We recommend the following best practices in a strategic approach in a regular review of your trade volumetric, at least annually. We recommend creating a trade compliance manual, including all past audits, to increase overall awareness and education to individuals and within your business. It's really not unlike working with your financial advisor while you're doing your taxes. It's important to update your broker service providers of any changes to your situation. A change in a dependent status on your taxes may allow other types of deductions or benefits, and it also impacts Stats Canada for transfer payments, sensitive data, etc. A broker can only be as valuable as the information that goes through working in partnership with you as the importer. I hope this presentation has provided some insight and value as to changing regulatory landscape and the associated risks, why it's important to have such a trusted relationship and partner relationship, and why it's important to use a single customs broker service provider. With that, I'll turn it over to Maria.
Well, thank you very much, Al, for that incredibly educational discussion, and thank you all for attending GHY's University webinar. If any of you have any questions at the moment, you can go ahead now, and we will wait just a minute or so here to answer any questions that you may have. Okay, well, I don't see anything coming up just yet, but if you would like more information or clarity regarding your broker relationship and the regulatory landscape, please contact Al at the address dewar@ghy.com. That's DEWAR. And feel free to connect with GHY International online via Facebook, LinkedIn, and or Twitter. To reiterate, we will be sending out a copy of the presentation slide deck, the recording of this webinar, along with a survey regarding your experience. Again, these surveys are important for us to know how we are doing, and it would be greatly appreciated if you could take the 5 minutes needed to fill it out for us. Thank you again for attending today, and please look forward for upcoming webinars in the new year. We hope you all have a great day.